recording now. We've been talking offline. We're going to get to the intro in a second, but what we're talking about is good. So let's keep going.
Excellent. So yeah, I realized we didn't have our why. And we were kind of in an indirect way, we kind of did, but for the last 6 months, what we were doing when we were talking to potential investors is we were sharing the what we did and how we did it.
Mhm.
And we realized that people don't work with people because of what and how they do. Like that's a big part of it. But why people choose to do business with you is why you do it.
Mhm.
Why you have that business. And Jim, my business partner, put us onto this book leading up to our quarterly meeting
Start with
and
why.
reading. Yeah, start with why. You've read it? Sounds like, dude, like something just resonated with me. And one of the ones that really stuck with me is the talking about your spouse, right? If somebody was to ask me why I love my wife, I'm going to start listing off all these logical, rational reasons why I love her, right? And why we're still together. And what they talked about in this book is like it's not like those rational reasons, that logic, that's us trying to justify the emotion that we're feeling. And the why I love her, it's not something you could truly put into words. It's a feeling, but we try to put it into words based on logic. And so we give this rationale as to why I love her. And he goes on to talk about all these different businesses. And he talked about Apple. Like, why is Apple so successful? It's not what and how they do. You look at most PCs and you look at the actual power and operating system, a lot of them could probably blow Apple computers out of the water. So it's not the what, it's the why. And Apple's all for innovation, ease of use, and bringing things to the common person. Um, so it was just absolutely fascinating. And I realized for the last 6 months, our conversations with investors is this is who we are. We invest in apartments. These are typical returns that you can see. This is how we underwrite deals. This is how we vet operators. It was 100% what and how. And over this weekend, with that shift, realizing and recognizing what our why is, our conversation is now going from this is what and how we do it to the why. And what that looks like for us, everybody on my team has a strong, strong desire to give and to serve. And that's really when we went around the table and shared our whys, we realized that's why we banded together. Because I think at the root of it, we all have a desire to give and to serve. And we see apartments as being the vehicle to provide that, for
Mm.
us to provide that to other people. Does that make sense? So over the weekend, as I was thinking about this, I'm like, our why is to grow and preserve other people's wealth so that they can more abundantly and freely give and serve of their time and money. That is our why as a company because it's what each one of us feels internally. But we just didn't never put it into words. And I'm when this clicked, I'm reflecting back on some of our investors and some of the experiences we've had, and it all comes back to giving and serving. And we truly believe that apartments are one of the best ways to grow and preserve wealth. So that's the what and the how. It's the vehicle. We were focusing too much on describing the vehicle rather than focusing on why you should spend time investing in that vehicle. So
Mm.
I'm excited to see what happens this next quarter for us. Just with that little pivot, like it was kind of always there, but we just didn't truly internalize it into every single conversation. So now my conversation with people that we connect with, Alec, is not, hey, here's the returns, here's how long the hold is, this is how it's structured. It's now, Alec, what's important to you? Why do you want to be successful? Why do you want to be a successful business owner? And we get talking about their why. And as soon as it links up and synergizes with our why, which is giving and serving, now we simply connect the dots and show Alec, and this is how, excuse me, this is how Rev can serve you. And this is how apartment investing can get you to where you want to be quicker or more abundantly. Do you see how that kind of shifts the whole conversation?
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
So I'm really excited just to again, like it's Tuesday when we're recording this. This came to me Sunday. I shared it with my team on Monday, yesterday. So I'm really excited to see over the next week as we kind of unpack it and start integrating it into more aspects of the business just to see what happens over the next few months.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, that was kind of our intro here, guys. So, welcome to episode number, I think it's at 14 now. I kind of lost count. I forgot. So, we're just going to not put a number on it. And we're just going to say this is another episode of Forged in the Fire. This show was specifically designed to hear from people who have achieved a level of success because life and success are not linear journeys. Our guests will be sharing their journey of how they walk through fire to be forged into their best selves, the same way a blacksmith forges a lump of steel into a sword. So, guys, I'm really excited. I've got I know I say a good buddy of mine on the show, but he is actually a really good friend of mine. We've spent a lot of time together on different various weekend trips, traveling with Rev. So, this is Dallin Schultz. He is, formerly, and now after we record this, it'll be allowed to be shared. He is now a fund manager, raising capital for apartments in different markets across the US. And previously, what they were doing is syndicating other people's money and investing that into apartments as well as development deals. So, Dallin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really excited to hear your journey of where you grew up, which I already know, but just diving deeper into it and the ascent and the journey of how you've gotten into doing what you're doing now. So welcome again.
Yeah, appreciate it, Alec. And I love what you're doing here. And it, it feels weird to be in this position, being interviewed in this type of seat. But and the reason being is because I have a lot of mentors. I have a lot of people I look up to that have leaps and bounds of more success than I do. But with that being said, I do recognize where I've come from and what I have achieved. And I understand that there's people out there that haven't started their journey yet. So hopefully there's something I can share with your listener that will resonate with them and help give them that courage and motivation to do what needs to be done.
Exactly. That's why we're here. So Dallin, rewind us all the way back. You live out in Arizona now, but where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, so I grew up in upstate New York, about 30 minutes south of Rochester. So you say you're from New York and people just think the city right away. No, I was about 5 hours from the city. Small town, graduated with 87 kids in my senior class. One stoplight in the town, a lot of farming, a lot of country, just it was chill. And I actually lived on 100 acres of land with all my family on my dad's side. So his brothers, sisters, cousins, grandparents, we all lived on this 100 acres of land, and all my friends would call it the compound. And it was a blast. You know, we all had ponds, we had quads and four-wheelers, and we just lived outside. We just explored. We're out in the country, and it was a lot of fun. And it was great growing up. And I played sports all throughout high school and even before high school. And it was just a pretty tight knit community, and it was a lot of fun growing up. And at the time, I'm in real estate now. At the time, I had no desire to be in real estate growing up as a kid, which is ironic because my grandfather owned about 300 apartment units, and my father managed them as a landlord. So I grew up around real estate. I grew up around apartments, and I always had a summer job. I'd go to the apartments, I'd work with my dad, and we'd shingle roofs, but I was doing all the grunt work. I was doing all the dirty work. And I look back and I was appreciative of it because my dad taught me good work ethic and I learned a lot of useful, handy skills. But that was my view of real estate. And I was like, no, that sucks. I can't, I don't want to spend my whole life changing toilets and cleaning apartments and painting walls and shingling roofs and doing all this stuff. So I actually decided to go down the medical route. I was always fascinated with how our bodies work and the physiology and all that. So I got my bachelor's in nursing, and I wanted to specialize to become a nurse anesthetist, and that ended up not working out. So I went completely different path. I wanted AC in the summer. I wanted heat in the winter. I didn't want to be outside at 4 o'clock in the morning shoveling snow off the sidewalks and icing them for the tenants that lived there. And so yeah, that's kind of a in summary how I grew up and the type of upbringing I was in.
Love it. Love it. Did you know at the time that your grandfather owned all the apartments, or did you just think your dad managed them?
No, no, I knew my grandfather owned them, but here's the deal, like with real estate, especially in apartments, it's not a get rich quick, it's a get rich for sure.
Mhm.
And my as a kid, your gauge to success is basically how much how much money you get from your grandparents for Christmas and your birthday, right? So that's like I don't know how else to put it because I you're so young and you're so naive. So my grandfather that was in the real estate, they maybe it was like $10, $20 for Christmas, birthday, whatever the case is. I had another set of grandparents who actually lived out here in Arizona, and they were the ones always bringing toys and treats when we visit, and they'd give the big birthday checks and stuff. And I always thought that they were the rich grandparents because I got more for birthday and Christmas. And ironically, like fast forward, my grandfather now has net worth of probably over $10 million. He's now freely giving to all of his grandkids, which is like 30 something grandkids. Like I think for Christmas he gave $500, and a few years back he gave all the grandkids like 5 grand because he's starting to liquidate some stuff and he wants to help out his family. So, and those other grandparents that I thought were the wealthy ones, they just retired and they're in their 70s. Right. And so like they were working. And so it was kind of interesting. I knew my grandfather was in real estate, but I was like, it can't be that good. Otherwise, I sound like a douche for even saying this, but like it can't be that good. Otherwise, I wouldn't just be getting $10 for Christmas. Right.
Yeah.
So that coupled with all the heavy lifting work that I did, and my grandfather lived very modestly. Like he was probably worth way more than I realized, but he was influenced by the depression era,
Mhm.
right? So and like World War II and all that stuff. So he lived very modestly and comfortably, but it wasn't the airplanes, the nice cars, the mansions, all that stuff that you would tie to wealth. And so it just went in one ear and out the other as a kid because I didn't know.
Yeah. When you're kids, I mean, you can't blame yourself because when you're a kid, you have no idea. Like I didn't know anything. Like my grandparents on my mom's side, my mom or my grandpa, he owned like I think it was over 1,000 acres of farmland, and they had multiple different farm sites and all these expensive tractors and all that. And I never like thought he was all that wealthy, because he always drove like super old trucks. They'd buy smashed trucks from the insurance companies and fix them up, and do the same thing with the tractors. And I come to find out years later that like they were actually worth quite a bit of money. I just didn't know. I don't think it was north of 10 million or anything like that, but more than I expected. And it was just kind of for me surprising.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know. But I realized later on, real estate was just in my blood. Entrepreneurship was in my blood, and even though I went down the medical field route, it it shifted, and here I am, full circle back doing real estate. But now I understand, and I'm more educated, and I'm on the ownership side of things where my grandfather was, and not on the management side of things where my father was.
Touche. Yeah, it's interesting. You had a little bit of a nudge to get back into what you were supposed to be doing. Um, so with that, let's talk about the journey of the medical field and what that was like. Because I know the story loosely of what happened, but share with the listeners of what it was like getting into the medical field, what you experienced, and why you ultimately left.
Yeah, so uh, I always knew I wanted to own real estate, even when I got into the medical field, and that's why I wanted to specialize, become a nurse anesthetist, make 200,000 to 300,000 a year, and then start buying single family homes, duplexes, fourplexes. Like that was my plan to do it. And I realized a few months working as a nurse in the emergency room, I was like, this is not what it was chalked up to be. And I started visualizing myself specializing and going to more. And I listen, I'm a very hands-on and visual learner. And that's not how you learn in school. Like schools, you read, you learn from a book, right? Which is absolutely the most inefficient way to learn. It's an efficient way to teach, but it's an inefficient way to learn, right? So I got into the nursing career and I'm like, hey, this isn't what I thought it would be. I wasn't as passionate about it as I thought I was. And when I started visualizing myself specializing to become a nurse anesthetist, it's more school, more work. I felt the walls closing in on me and I started feeling trapped and I couldn't explain it. Like I started feeling almost claustrophobic anytime I thought about it because I realized if I was going to invest all this time and money to specialize into something that I for sure wasn't super passionate about, would I just be wasting my time for the next 6 years? And I didn't want to do that. I was married. I had 2 kids at the time. And I was like, I don't want to take my family through that. And right at that time, I was playing soccer at in a tournament there at the nearby college, and I had a bad accident. Kid was taking a shot. I got my leg in the way, and he completely missed the ball, and his entire kick went right into my shin bone, right into my tibia, and you could just hear it, and I dropped, and I knew like right away that it was messed up. Like I've broken quite a few bones in my life, and it's not because I got weak bones. I just do stupid stuff that puts me in those situations. But I remember laying there just in agonizing pain, and three grown men had to carry me off the field because I was incapable of moving. And anytime I felt like anytime my leg felt like it moved, I felt like it was snapping in half. It wasn't like the bone wasn't displaced, but that's what it felt like.
Ooh.
And so I had to go to the emergency room where I worked as a nurse. So all my coworkers are making fun of me when they see me wheeling in a wheelchair. They're like, "Oh, what you do now?" And I was kind of in denial, and even though like deep down I knew it was shattered. And then when the PA came in and actually showed me the X-ray of what had happened, in that moment, and let me back up. Like a big reason I got into the medical field was for the safety and security. Like I knew people were going to get sick. I knew people were going to get hurt. I was always going to have a job.
Yep.
And I went into that with that comfort. What I failed to realize is what would happen is if I was the one that got sick or injured. So I'm sitting in this hospital bed looking at this X-ray. And I had just started working. So I didn't have sick leave. I didn't have PTO. I didn't have time off. I didn't have anything to provide for my family when I was incapable of working. Because you can't be an ER nurse with a broken leg. You've got to do CPR. You've got traumas. You've got codes. Like you're running stuff around. Like you absolutely can't do it. For getting into a job that I thought was so safe and secure, I've never felt so financially insecure and scared in my entire life. Because it wasn't just me. Like if it was just me, I'd figure it out. I'd pick up some ramen or something and live off that. But I was married with 2 kids. Like, how am I supposed to provide for them if I can't work? And something internally in my brain I was crushed. I was like, this is, and at this point, I already realized this isn't what I wanted to do. And this was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Fortunately, we were short staffed. And so what they did was they just put me up at that desk up front in the ER and I checked in other people. It was a triage desk. So I checked in other people. So fortunately, with a broken leg, I took 1 week off, got casted up and went right back to work, sat in a chair with my foot elevated, and I checked in other people that were coming into the ER. So fortunately, I was still able to provide financially for my family, but internally, I knew something had to give. Something had to change because if this was to happen again, I didn't want to put myself or my family in this situation. So started listening to podcasts, heard about this purple book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Almost everyone and their dog in real estate has read it. I read that book and something in my brain clicked. And 2 weeks later, we had our first fourplex purchased without any of our own money. So I realized in that moment, I don't need the medical field. I don't need to specialize. I don't need to make $300,000-$400,000 a year to get into real estate because I just did it in 2 weeks without any of my own money. And a few months later, we got into our second one. And now I caught the real estate bug because I was learning along the way and I could see the potential and there was no turning back. And that's really what jump started my career into real estate.
With those two deals, I want to kind of unpack this for me and for the listeners. How did you get those two fourplexes without any of your own money?
Great question. So I'll just share the first one because the second one was just the same way, with a little caveat that I'll probably throw in as well for somebody that just doesn't know what they don't know. Because that was me. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I knew I wanted real estate. So that first deal, I knew I wanted real estate, and I was just thinking, I was like, where can I start? Who do I know that has real estate? And so I actually called up a previous landlord that my wife and I rented from when we were first married, and she was an elderly woman. And when I say elderly, like like elderly, like I'm kind of surprised they're still kicking, to be honest. So, anyways, I call her up and I was like, "Hey, Sharon, it's Dallin." She's like, "Oh, Dallin, how are you?" And we're having this conversation. And I said, "Hey, I'm actually looking at getting involved into real estate. Out of curiosity, are you guys interested in selling your fourplex that we lived in?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, like, nah, they're working out great for us. We're not in the position to sell, but the guy next to me is actually looking at selling." And so where these fourplexes were, there's about, I think, 4 or 5 fourplexes that were built all at the same time. So same floor plan owned by different owners. And I said, "Awesome. Would you mind making an introduction?" She said, "Sure." She sent me his number. I give him a call and I said, "Hey, Claude, I used to rent from Sharon. She mentioned that you might have some real estate for sale." I'd never underwritten deals at this point. I didn't know what to look for. I didn't even know what title was, escrow. Like, okay, let me back up. I knew a little bit of that because we bought our first house, but other than that, I've never bought an investment property. And he says, "Yeah, absolutely looking to sell." I said, "Great. Can we come by and take a look at it in a few days?" He said, "Sure." So we went by, we look at it, and we start talking about terms. He sold that fourplex to us, and I know this is going to sound crazy now, because you can't find this anywhere in Arizona. And this was a small town. This was a small town, tertiary market, Eastern Arizona. He said, I want 200,000 for the fourplex. So that's 50,000 a unit. And to give people an idea, in Phoenix, you're looking at 750, 800,000, maybe more for a fourplex right now. So he said, "I want 200,000. I will carry 175,000." So he was going to do a seller carry back. So I was like, "What's that?" I went on Google. I was like, "What's a seller carry back?" And he had it paid off. So rather than getting a loan from the bank, he just carried the note for 175,000. So what we needed was 25,000 down. So I reached out to my grandfather because he was the one that I've known that's most successful in real estate up to that point. I said, "Hey, there's an opportunity here. Do you have anything that can help me to figure out if it's a good deal?" And he sent me this spreadsheet that he had put together. Like when I say spreadsheet, like I'm talking like half of an Excel page is what he used to like analyze some of these deals. And I was like, "All right, it's something to start with." So that's what I used to buy that first fourplex. And I plug and chug the numbers. I look to see how the numbers calculated, but I still didn't have the 25K. But after going through that work and showing him, I then presented it to my grandfather. And I said, "Hey, would you be interested in this opportunity to come in with us?" And he said, "Sure." So rather than coming in as a partner, he just loaned us the 25,000.
Okay.
So the seller carried 175,000. He loaned us the 25,000. And then we used a little bit of our own cash for like closing costs and things like that. And we still structured it through a title company. So Stewart Title was, I believe, the company we used. So they were still servicing the loan. And so it's not like I was paying the seller directly. And that's
Right.
how we got into that first deal.
Sweet.
So we had no money set aside for renovations and stuff. I mean, some of our own, but we did a lot of the work. And that's how we got into the first one.
That's cool. That's super cool. Especially that you're able to get a seller carry deal on your first one. That's not always the most common.
No, and we talked them down to 3%. And this was back in 2017 when interest rates were probably around 4 or 5% around that time. Maybe high threes, but yeah, for a carryback too, like that's not typical because most carrybacks they want like 6 to 10% because it's short term.
Yep.
But this was an old guy that just didn't need the money and was just okay with the 3%. So we took it. We didn't know how good of a deal it was. Looking back, I'm like, man, 50,000 a unit with it was like a 95, 97% LTV carryback at 3%. I'm like, man, if only all deals were that easy.
No kidding. Oh my goodness.
So, and then the second deal, a couple months later, we structured the same way. The difference here, and this was the only difference. That one, it wasn't a carryback. We actually had to get a loan through a lender, and we used my grandfather again for the down payment. And this is where we got ourselves into trouble because since it was an investment property, we couldn't accept any gift money to purchase it. And so the lender doesn't want to see that you're 100% leveraged on it. So with that seller carryback, it didn't matter. So a lender didn't want to see that we were 100% leveraged. If they were lending 75% and we were borrowing another 25% from a private lender, now we're 100% leveraged. So to get around this, if you're buying a primary residence, you can accept that gift money from a family member and it's okay. And they'll allow that, but not with an investment property. And we didn't know this. And so this is coming up with our lender. And so what we had to do was we got that money from my grandfather and we had to put it in our bank account and let it season for 3 months before we could close on this deal. And fortunately, the seller, because at that point they look back at your 3-month average of your bank loan and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is your money, right? Fortunately, the seller was very cooperative and we were explaining the situation and we were able to get through it and finally close. But we tried structuring it the same way as the first deal and you can't do that. so we learned.
Was that with the same seller or different guy?
Different.
Okay.
Yep. So learned a lot in those first 2 deals, but I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew I wanted to get it done and we made it happen.
Yeah. So what happened with after you broke your leg and it healed up? Like what was next after that?
So I knew I wanted to be all in real estate, but I couldn't financially support us at that point. So I still worked for about 1.5 years as a registered nurse and don't have any regrets, but I remember that last year just being miserable. I just wasn't happy. I was stressed going into work. I wasn't looking forward to it. And I did night shift as well. So that messes with you mentally and physically and stuff. But I knew I had to get out because I'd go to the hospital. And once you get on, like change of shift is crazy because you got day shift coming off, night shifts coming on. There's a bunch of medications that are due. Dinner is happening. It's chaos for the first few hours. So by 10, 11 o'clock, I get everyone situated. I get medications passed and they lay down for the evening, right? At that point, I would take a breather, and then I'd get on the computer and I'd start underwriting apartment deals. And I did this every single night I worked. And because I couldn't get enough of the real estate. So I did as much as I could until about 2 or 3 in the morning when you're just brain dead because you're pulling an all-nighter. And then come morning time, there's a lot of stuff we had to do to prep for day shift. But it took time. It took time to transition out, and I got my real estate license initially to help with that transition. And I didn't want to be a realtor, but I didn't want to be a nurse either. I said, at least being a real estate agent, I'm around real estate. At least it's something closer to what I want to be doing. And that helped supplement us and gave me enough courage to leave the W-2 and to jump in this self-employment world and this world of entrepreneurship. And man, was I blindsided, because I mean, up to that point, you show up to a job and you know what you need to do. They tell you, hey, you do this, this, and this. Okay. You go through it, you work through the day. Every 2 weeks, you get a paycheck and you rinse and repeat. Like, there's a lot that you can expect to happen. And when I left and I became my own boss, I didn't realize how unprepared I was emotionally, spiritually, mentally, right? Like, that first 6 months was hell, because I had to go through, I had to work on myself, and I didn't realize how much of that was lagging behind. Because when you go to work for someone else, like, yes, you're pushing yourself, yes, you're challenging yourself, but when your job, when your outcome, when your income is determined based on your efforts alone, and there's nobody else you can blame, it's a completely different experience. So I unintentionally found this deep passion for personal growth and mindset and personal development because of what I experienced transitioning from that W-2 to that entrepreneurship world. So yeah, after I broke my leg, but I worked about a year and a half more, transitioned out, trying to figure out all this self-employed and real estate stuff, and just kind of slowly getting by. And so this was October 2019. I left the medical field. We all know what happened in 2020, right? So March 2020, COVID hit. Right as COVID was starting to become a thing in March, we had just, like, we were under contract to sell one of those four plexes we bought early on, and COVID started becoming a thing. And both me and the buyer were like, hey, we don't know what's happening. Let's hurry up and get this done. And we did. And as a gift to myself, I was going to buy myself a mountain bike, because I'd recently started getting into mountain biking. And I went to the bike shop. I rented the bike for the day that I wanted to rent, and I went out riding. Went out the next day with a buddy. Last run of the day, I went over my handlebars. I hit my front brake too hard. I went over the handlebars, and I came down on both elbows.
Was waiting for this story.
So I came down on both elbows, and immediately I'm like, I'm in denial, right? Like, same thing what happened with my leg. Like, I knew they were broken, but I told myself they weren't. I'm just gonna go home and ice it. I sat there for like 10 minutes. I got the shock, the nausea, and everything that comes with breaking bones. And if you haven't broken a bone, like, you're not missing much. I'm telling you that right now. So I sat there for a few minutes. My buddy came down, was like, what just happened, dude? I just saw your feet come flying over. And at that point, one of my elbows was already swollen up to the size of a softball, probably bigger. So I sat there for a few minutes. I walk my bike down to the car. I get in my car. He's like, do you want me to drive? And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm in denial. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I can drive. I couldn't even grab my seatbelt. And I'm like, yeah, actually, Ben, would you mind driving? Like, I can't even buckle myself in. So he drives me home, and my wife is like, what did you do? Because, like, we just went through this traumatic experience a couple years prior with my leg. And I was like, it's fine. I'm just going to sit in the bath, ice it. 2 hours goes by and nothing. Like, both arms are just killing. So we decided to go in, get them x-rayed. Sure enough, they're both shattered.
Not that I was wanting for you to tell this story, but I was like, wait, hold on. I swear there was 2 broken elbows in this story somewhere.
Yes. And here's the thing, like, because of my decision to get into real estate 2 years prior, I just shared that we just sold one of our assets, right? So from selling that, I had in my bank account what would have taken me probably 2 years as a nurse to save up. And we sold that like 2 weeks prior to this accident. So as much as I hate breaking bones, and I know that sounds strange because I do it so frequently, as much as I hate it, I didn't have the financial stress that accompanied my broken leg because of my decisions to get into real estate 2 years prior. And the reason I shared this with you, Alec, the reason I got into real estate is because I told myself if something was to happen like this again, how would I take care of my family? And sure as shit, 2 years later, it happened again, right? Night and day difference experience. Because at this point, I could focus on healing. I could focus on not worrying and stressing about how I was going to take care of my family. And I knew right then, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was in the right space and I was making the right moves for my family. And that, if there was like one thing that like really secured my life as a real estate professional and trying to help others get into it as well so that they could experience what I did, it was that moment. As much as it sucked breaking bones for all this to happen, that's what was required for me to realize I was in the right path and on the right journey. And I realized like everybody hits a breaking point. Like it could be losing a job, it could be losing a loved one. Like you're going to hit a breaking point that's going to challenge where you're at in life and make you rethink where you need to be and what you need to be doing. In my case, it was literal breaking points that got me there. But again, as much as it sucked, and if anyone else has experienced these breaking points, looking back, you realize that that's what God needed you to go through to get you to where you are today.
For your fire. Yep, that was it for me too. When my mother passed when I was 22, I looked at everything in my life and I was like, I'm so unhappy with what's going on right now. Like, sure, everything was fine before this happened, but it's time to make a change. So, kind of shifting there, and so when you broke your elbows, was that when you started the meetup, or when did that all happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. So so I left my job October 2019, and I knew that if I wanted to be successful in the apartment investing space, I had to get around other like-minded people. So I was looking for meetups and couldn't really find one that really resonated with me. So I started my own. And I said, hey, rather than trying to go find people, let me bring them to me. It just seemed more efficient. So we started that January of 2020. So we had an event January, February, March hit, COVID, everything shut down. So we didn't have a meetup in March, and then I broke my elbows. So we didn't have a meetup for a few months. And then when things started opening back up a little bit more in Arizona, we decided to bring it back. So I think it was maybe 3 months later. And at that point, I was going through physical therapy. I had movement back in my elbows. But I remember going back and sharing that story about breaking my arms and like bragging that I could actually move them. And I remember like flexing and kind of moving them around. So we brought the meetup back, and that was such a pivotal moment for myself and my company and the people I was working with at the time, because it gave us a leadership platform. It gave us something to educate people on and to build some credibility in the space. And we kept pushing it, and we ended up becoming the largest apartment investing meetup in the state of Arizona. And it was super cool to watch that growth, and had some key individuals that just came in at the right time to really help me grow that. It 100% wasn't all me. I'm the idea guy, I'm the visionary type of guy, but I've found incredible people that synergize with that and that can execute on different areas of the business. And so we were able to grow that. And it was super cool because like 2 years into it, this was last January, biggest event we had to date. I think we had like almost 100 people there, and this was on a Tuesday night. And walks Robert Kiyosaki.
That was such a cool night.
And yeah, and you were there too. And I remember networking with people, and they're like, "Dude, Robert Kiyosaki's here. And I'm like, no way. No way. Like he wouldn't, there's no way he wouldn't come here. Like I know he lives in Phoenix, but we're just a nightly, monthly meetup. Like he wouldn't just show up. And as they're telling me this, they're like pointing at this gentleman over on the side of the room. And I could see the side profile. And he was like this Oriental American side profile. And I start like kind of like scanning, doing like a sweep around like from across the room. And I'm like, holy shit, that's Robert Kiyosaki. It is him. So I just like I stopped whoever I was networking with. I apologize. I don't even remember who it was. Like I just bolted straight to Robert Kiyosaki because I was like, this is my event. He's in my room. I'm sure as hell going to introduce myself and shake this guy's hand. So I went up and I said, Robert, I appreciate you coming. My name's Dallin. I'm the host of this event. How'd you hear about us? Like what brought you in? And one of the attendees that came knew him and she invited him out. And I said, listen, you probably hear this all the time, but your book literally changed my life. And he's like, oh, no, I don't hear it enough. And I think he's full of crap because I think everyone tells him that. But then I shared with him, I said, 4 years ago, I was working as a medical professional and I had just broken my leg. I read your book and 2 weeks later, literally 2 weeks later, I bought my first real estate property after reading your book. I said, your book literally changed my life. And he just expressed his appreciation and said he was glad to help. And I said, listen, I want to be respectful to you and your time because I know you're here as a guest, but would you be open to speaking to our group for a few minutes? And he's like, sure, I'd be happy to. Just if you could get me up there sooner than later, that'd be great because I have an early flight in the morning. I said, absolutely. So I get up on stage, I welcome everyone. And I was like, listen, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Robert Kiyosaki's in the room and he stands up and starts waving and people thought I was joking. There was people in that room that still didn't realize he was in that room with them. And so it was super cool. And that's my claim to fame. I got to share a stage with Robert Kiyosaki and I didn't have to pay him his $50,000 speaking fee or however much it is. But it was so cool just to see everything kind of come full circle from when I started my journey a few years back.
I remember that night like distinctly. I was walking in and I was on a call. I can't remember what it was. I was dealing with one of our properties and on the phone with somebody on my team or one of our buyers or something. I don't know what it was. And I walk in and I see this Asian man standing there with glasses on and he was on the phone too. And I just glanced down at his name tag because everybody wears name tags at the event. And it said Robert. I like paused. I backed up a second. I like looked. I walked over to Lacey and I was like, "Hold on a second. Is that who the fuck I think it is? Like, is that Robert Kiyosaki?" She's like, "Yes, that's freaking cool." That was pretty neat.
It was that was probably one of the most memorable nights I've ever had. It was so cool just to be able to have them there and know that we created an event that would even warrant the opportunity to bring someone like that in. So it was super neat.
And for those that don't know, there is another event this week with over 150 people registered already.
We're actually over 170 now.
Dude, that's sweet.
Yeah. So and again, it's just a nightly meetup. This isn't a 2 or 3 day conference. This is just a come get to know the Rev team and come learn about apartment investing. And the room is full of incredible people. Incredible people.
That's gonna be really awesome. I'm excited to see how big it is that night.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
So we started the meetup 2020. It grew very massively. And I'll kind of summarize this for everybody, but they also started going into other markets and having other people become chapter leaders for them. And then next began focusing more on the investment side. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So I realized what we had as a meetup, and we wanted to bring that opportunity to other people and help grow the brand. And so we connected with some with some chapter leaders and help them coach them to grow successful meetups. And after about a year, it just kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. And it was tough because we spent a lot of time and energy and capital to invest in this, and it didn't work out the way that we thought. And so we said, hey, let's pivot. And at that same time, we as a company were deciding to really focus on what was important, and that is the investment side of the business. That's really what we realized was going to move the needle. And we decided more specifically to focus on not just acquiring deals, like other people do really good at that. What we found we're good at is connecting with investors and educating them and helping them understand what goes into these deals. And we're able to connect with them on a deeper level. They trust us. They know that we have integrity, and just after a few conversations, they feel comfortable working with us. And that's really where our focus is now, is focusing on raising capital. And we're super excited because in the next month or so, I'm not sure when this is going to air, we're actually going to be launching our fund. And we were involved in some previous syndications that we brought some investors to, and we just see this fund as an opportunity to really provide the best experience to our investors that we already have. And we're meeting with new investors every single week. So we just see it as a very unique and powerful vehicle to, again, going back to our why that we discovered, helping these people really grow and preserve their wealth so that they can more abundantly and freely give of their time and money, whatever that looks like to them. And if people don't resonate, if they don't have that why personally themselves, and then they're not going to resonate with our company, and that's okay. And if we're in conversations with someone and we realize that that why is not there, we'll likely suggest that they consider another group. Because at the end of the day, it's all about creating a good community of operators, of investors, and really being a part of something bigger together than we could all accomplish on our own. And that's really what we're trying to create with Rev. And apartments and the fund just happen to be the vehicle that we use to accomplish that.
Love it. Let's see, where do we want to go next here with this? What advice would you have for somebody that wants to either get it into syndications and funds, multifamily, or they just want to get into real estate and find their own journey to financial freedom?
100%. You need to find an asset class that resonates with you. And for me, that was apartments. It didn't start that way. I remember the first podcast I listened to was the Real Estate Guys Radio, and they talk all things real estate. And so that's where I started because I didn't know what I wanted. And the more I kept learning about multifamily, that's what attracted me. Now there's other people that like the hospitality. There's people that like the single family rentals. There's people that like Airbnb. There's people that like industrial office. There's so many ways to be successful in real estate. It can be difficult to see what other people are doing because you're going to find people successful in every single area of real estate or business. And so what you've got to do is really like pay attention to that gut feeling and like what resonates with you, what makes sense, what gets you excited. And the reason being is because you've got to be able to visualize it. You've got to believe that you can do it. And if it feels like it's so far out of reach, you on a personal level aren't going to do what you need to do to be able to make it happen. And so do some initial research, just listen to some podcasts and see what resonates with you. And as soon as you find something that somewhat piques your interest, get around other people doing it as soon as possible. Get around those people and start asking them questions. And if you don't know it, that's an even better position to be in, because what we fall into, the trap we fall into, is as we become educated in an area, we want to tell everybody what we know. because we want to sound sophisticated and we want to give ourselves credibility, when in reality, people don't give a damn. Like, they just want to connect with you. And if all you're doing is talking about what you know and this and that, and you're not giving them a chance to talk, you're doing yourself a disservice. So what I'm saying is, if you're not familiar in that industry or in that asset class, you've got the upper hand, because you're going to be forced to ask questions. And what do people like talking about the most?
Themselves.
Themselves. So you're going to start asking questions. They're going to start sharing with you their experience. And from there, you can continue to learn and determine if that's a route you want to go down. And you just got to keep pursuing it. If it feels right and you're getting around other people that are doing it, you start to visualize and see yourself doing it. And I remember early on, I was connecting with these people that were buying apartments. And not that I had an image of what these people look like, but I was talking to them. I was like, what the, if this person can buy an apartment building, I sure as hell could buy an apartment building. Like,
Mhm.
why not me? Why not me? And I just kept asking that question, and it kept pushing me to keep pursuing that. And and it's not something that happens overnight. Like I said, this started, I left my job back in 2018, 2019, sorry. And first real estate was bought in like 2017. And I'm nowhere near where I want to be and where I know I am capable of being. And but that's okay. Like, I'm enjoying the journey. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got 3 kids. We've got another one due any day now. And so yes, my focus and priorities might be different than somebody else in their 20s that are just starting out. But at the end of the day, it's not like how quick you can do it. It's really just pushing through and recognizing and realizing that your journey, your path is going to be different than the person next to you. And it might take longer to get to where you want to be, but maybe there's more stuff you had to learn along the way. Or maybe you have other priorities that should be taking priority first. In my case, it's my family. And if I start focusing too much on business, I can feel that disconnect with the family. And that's not okay, because my oldest kid is 8 years old. And before I know it, she's going to be 18 and out of the house. So now is my time to make sure I'm spending time with her and creating that connection with her as a dad, so that when she goes through hard times throughout the rest of her life, we have that connection. We have that trust, we have that relationship. And I want to teach her about business. I want to teach her about entrepreneurship and teach her the things that I've gone through, so that when she gets to that point of deciding college or business, she can make an educated decision. Because a lot of people just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, that too. And also it's going to be cool for them looking back, because none of them understand right now what's going on. I'm sure they do on a loose level, but none of them understand that you're literally building your dreams right now, and them getting to see you pursuing your dreams. I was having a conversation a couple weeks ago with these 2 guys out of Dallas and Houston, and they're like, oh well, like, on the weekends, like I have my kids, so I can't, make calls or whatever. I was like, hey, spend time with your kid, but also at the same token, have them be around you while you're making the calls and making those sacrifices, not where you're giving them 0% of your time, but you're still allotting the time to them, but you're also having them see you building your dreams, because that's going to be so important for them later on down the road, for them to, when they go out to pursue their dreams, they saw that you were doing it too.
Yeah.
They're like, what? Do you have kids? I was like, no, I don't. I don't have kids yet, but I've got enough friends that have kids that have talked to me about this kind of stuff.
Well, and we were all kids
Mhm.
at some point, right? So like, I'm sure a lot of us could look back, like looking back as a kid, I don't, I, I wish I had the desire to ask my grandfather more about what he did and how he did it. But I didn't care. I was a kid and I was concerned with sports and friends, right? And then in high school, it was sports, friends, and girlfriends. So it's like business, real estate, that stuff it didn't really resonate with me. It just wasn't a priority. So either way, like, we've all been kids and we can look back and say, hey, I wish I learned this, or I wish I learned that. So even though you don't have kids, I'm sure there's still experiences and things that you wish you were taught when you were a kid.
100%. So that leads me into one of the other things I wanted to ask you. How do you balance or find a way to maintain both, because you have a family and you also have a business that you're building and creating something out of?
That's a great question. And I gave up on balance a long time ago. I truly did. Because when you think about balance, you think like 50-50, right? Like that's balanced. And by no means is that ever the case in my life. And I kept trying to force that to be the case for so long, and I just realized it's not. So you hear this term often, like work life balance. For me, it's a work life integration.
Mm,
And so one thing that and my wife is so good about helping me out with this, because I love what I do and I'm very futuristic thinking. So I can get just stuck into work and the grind, and I lose track of time. I just get so into it. What I've done to try to help with this work life integration is very much like be present when I'm present. So when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home, I'm at home. I might be present with my kids 3 hours out of a day, and I'm going to be at work 7 hours of the day. That's not balance.
mhm,
But realizing that if I'm 100% present in both of those, I can maximize those opportunities as much as possible. And it's hard. I'm not saying like I've got this dialed in. Like I feel like I go on these spurts where I've got a good, it's got a good feel, like things are good at home, I'm spending time with the wife, with the kids, things are going good at work, and then all of a sudden something at work will pull my attention away, and I realize a few weeks later like I've neglected my family for the past few weeks. So then I have to backstep and be like, okay, what do I need to do in the business, or what do I need to do at home to make things right again? And so I kind of have to back up, reprioritize, and make some adjustments. And that's just, I just realized and accepted that that's part of the journey. Will I ever have it completely dialed in and figured out? Probably not. But what I have realized is that I'm recognizing that disconnect sooner. So
mm,
when things are out of sync, is what I like to think of it as, is like you're either in sync or you're out of sync. And when I realize that things are out of sync because I'm neglecting things either at work or at home, I pick up on that sooner than I probably would have before. And I'm able to make the fine tune adjustments to get it operating in sync again. So I'm firing on all cylinders. And if I don't catch it soon enough, it gets bad, and it takes me a week or two to kind of figure it out. And I think every entrepreneur has experienced that, where they hit these funks, they spiral, they go through these things. But at the end of the day, if you keep pushing, you're going to come out of it, and you'll figure it out.
100%. I like that work life integration, because I agree. It's, if you think about balance, they are supposed to be equal. When I look at work and life balance, I look at impactful time. Like when I don't spend a, I mean, this is gonna sound bad. I spend more time working than I do with Lacey and the dogs and all that. We don't have kids yet. So, but when I'm there, I do my best to try and be as focused as I possibly can. Uh, Obviously, there's, like you said, going to be work calls and things that come up that you have to kind of take away from it. But we do our best to try and leave work at work and have home time. What are some of your hobbies that you have outside of work
Breaking bones.
besides breaking bones?
I've become very uh, appreciative of the outdoors. So I'm usually hiking, going for walks. We've got kayaks, so we'll kayak the river nearby our house. For a while there, we had a razor, a Polaris razor. I grew up on four wheelers, so off roading. I've got a dirt bike now, and I am kind of an adrenaline junkie, so I've got to do things that really get that adrenaline going up, especially when I'm working a lot, because I'm in the office, I'm on the computer, I'm sitting, I'm not moving. So I try to be as active as I can. Um, and I still play soccer. I still mountain bike occasionally. So even though I injured myself pretty bad with both those, I still do it because it's important for me to keep active. And I'd say the thing that my wife and I are most passionate about is traveling. We look for every experience and opportunity we can to travel, and we've instilled this into our kids as well. And there's parents that will have little kids and be like, "Oh no, we can't do that because my kid's got a nap time or they don't travel well in the car." We never let that stop us, and we just brought our kids with us to do what we wanted to do. And they are great travelers. And everyone's always commenting like, "Oh my gosh, your kids do so well." It's like, yeah, because we didn't allow them to prevent us from doing what was important to us, what we're passionate about. So we were in Hawaii for 2 weeks last year with my kids, just just being lazy, hanging out on the beach and experiencing the culture in Hawaii. And I know there's going to be a lot more opportunities to travel. So I'd say that's probably our number one thing because that's something my wife and I could do together.
Touche. Love traveling. If you look back on it, this is kind of we're getting into the forge and the fire part. If you looked back at it, what was, it could be what we've talked about so far or something else. One of the biggest obstacles or hurdles that you've overcome.
Ooh, I don't want to say that I've overcome it yet because it's an ongoing process, but my mindset, dude, like it's incredible how powerful our minds really are. And I realized that for so long in my life, I was living in this consciously unconscious state. So I was living, I was doing things, but I wasn't aware of how different things in my surrounding were really impacting me. And what I mean by that is like I'm at a point now where if I get home, my wife likes watching TV shows in the evening to kind of wind down, and occasionally I'll watch something with her. But if she's watching like some sort of drama of any kind, like I pick up on that, and I start feeling internally, I start feeling stressed, and I kind of feel myself going into this fight or flight response. And it's not that I don't think it's anything new. This has probably been happening to me all along. I just wasn't aware of it because I was living in this consciously unconscious state, right? So with the mindset and just going down this entrepreneur journey, I become more self-aware of what affects me. And I'm still, again, I'm still trying to work on this and dial it in to make sure that I'm in the best peak state and the best mindset to take on the challenges that come with this, because it is not easy. It is not easy. And like I'm at a point now too, addicted to caffeine. Okay. Ever since working night shift as a nurse, addicted to caffeine. And as I've gotten older too, I don't know if there's other stuff going on in my body. So I'm getting other work checked on and stuff too. But there's times where I on a good day, probably 600 milligrams of caffeine just to feel like I could keep going. Right. And I would usually start at 4 o'clock, 4:35 in the morning with 250, 300 milligrams of pre-workout. And then from there, I just like kept adding it on just to get through the day. Internally, I felt like that was severely affecting my ability to think clearly and to receive thoughts, inspiration, intuition on what I needed to do and where the business needed to go. So I'm at a point now where I'm not even consuming any caffeine, and I feel zero, and I feel great. I mean, the first week, don't get me wrong, like headaches, withdrawals, all that stuff. And just recently too, I've decided to cut out all sugar. Now, when I say I know there's a lot of sugar in a lot of the foods that we eat that's added. So I really try to monitor that. But when I say sugar, I'm talking about ice cream, treats, desserts. I got a sweet tooth. And after dinner, like that's usually when I go all in. So I shared at the start of our podcast just kind of where we're going these next 3 months. And 2 weeks ago is when I already decided personally to make these changes because I felt like a big shift was coming. I felt like a big push was coming, and I wanted to make sure that I was in the right mental state to take on whatever is thrown at us over these next few months. And so yeah, I mean it's one of those things that just learning to overcome and control that mindset and to condition it and to train it, it's what I would say is one of my biggest accomplishments to date. With that being said, I'm still working on it every single day.
It is hard. Uh, so you mentioned like cutting out caffeine, being conscious of the TV thing, which I can totally relate to. Like the TV, I still like to watch, Netflix with Lacey at night before we're going to bed and whatnot for like an hour. But sometimes she'll put on like these, I don't know if it was Selling Sunset or whatever the like soap operas are, or I don't know what the hell you call them, but just it just so much unnecessary drama. I'm like, Lacey, turn this off or I'm going to go in another room because I'm losing brain cells watching this.
Yeah.
She did not like that too much, but we changed it. So, um, what else do you do to help sharpen your mind and keep your mindset sharp?
I try to move every single day. And when I move, I mean like exercise. Um, and I found starting my day that way, whether it's lifting weights or going for a run, like I've got to get that heart rate up because like a walk in itself isn't good enough. That's what I do in the evening to kind of like decompress and wind down. But in the morning, I've realized I've got to get moving. And the sooner I can do that and get that heart rate level up the quickest, like, and maintain it for 30, 45 minutes, it just sets the tone for the whole day. So that's a big one, exercise. And the days that I don't exercise, I feel it. I feel it 100%. So that's a big one, exercising. I've really been trying to watch what I'm eating and what I'm consuming because I'm becoming more aware and educated on all the crap that's put into our foods, like
Horrible.
unnecessary crap that we're just ingesting into our bodies and causing so many issues. So I've been a lot more conscious of what I'm eating as well and trying to eat just a little bit healthier, a little bit more organic and things like that. I want to say I'm like straight like keto or anything like that. I'm not super strict, but just becoming more aware and choosing to consume the right foods, and cutting out sugar was huge for me because I don't crave things like I used to. So like I can eat a small healthy meal and feel fulfilled with it.
Mm.
So food, exercise, um, and for me, taking time to process the day, process where the business is at. It's so easy to get caught up in the I've got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. And you don't allow opportunities for new ideas and inspiration to come. So that's where I've taken time in the mornings and in the evenings to just really process the day and think about, okay, how do I want tomorrow to go? And what are some big things that I want to get done? And just really start the next day out the day before or the evening before.
Love it. Do you do any sort of like journaling or like meditation and visualization or any of that?
Yeah, meditation and visualization for sure. And I usually do that both in the morning and the evening. I used to be really consistent about journaling. I haven't been as much recently, but I need to start it back up because my mind is going 1,000 miles an hour all day long. And what I found with journaling is that I'm able to process that. And maybe not even process is the right word, but kind of just like mind dump. I can just get what's on my mind off onto paper. And I actually I use my computer to type. I've got a journal that I type. It's a lot quicker and efficient for me. But that enables me to kind of clear my mind again to allow to kind of free up some space for new thoughts and new ideas. So there was one point in my life where I was consistent of journaling every single day, and it was extremely therapeutic for me. And now I'm like, I just wrote in it this past weekend because of some transitions we're going through. And I look back and the previous entry was 6 months ago. So I'm
That's a
trying to
lot.
be more consistent, but that was me just getting caught up in the business. So yeah, I highly recommend journaling, and it's something I'm working on implementing more routinely, but 100% meditation, visualization as well, because that's taking time to do that allows you to envision what your life can be like when you hit those goals, and it drives you and it pushes you.
Yeah, that's been a little more unclear for me lately. Just I don't know why, but it's been harder for me to call to mind some of my visualizations. I'm really trying to consciously do it. And sometimes I'm in such like a my brain moves like yours all the time. It's just like a watch always moving on high speed. And so I'll sit and I have a I think I've told you about it. The Muse, it's like a meditation headband that reads your brain with an EKG. And so I'll do that before I get into visualizing sometimes because otherwise I can't see it at all. Can you share any lessons that you've learned through failure?
Uh, it's going to come up, it's going to happen, and you can allow those failures to shape you and define you, or you can learn from them and just move forward. And so anytime something doesn't work out as planned, like there's always a moment of, oh shit, and like that sucks, and I think that's okay to experience that. You just don't want to dwell on it, and you don't want to stay there. So get pissed off, cuss, say whatever you got to do, but then revisit it and say, okay, that didn't work out. What did I learn from it? How can I prevent it from happening again? And how is this making me a better person or preparing me better for what's to come?
Love it. All right. This is our end of the show type questions where I just fire them at you real quick. How do you define success?
Oh, you said quick questions, and these are deep questions, Alec.
They are some
Um, I'd say I would define success as feeling in sync and in tune. Like when your life, when your business, when everything is in sync and you feel like you're just going with the flow, I would consider that success.
what is your why or your purpose that keeps you going?
A couple of them. One, I shared my passion for traveling. I I want to travel this world. I want to visit every country that I can. I want to meet new people, new cultures. Like I am motivated to experience and live different places. And for me, and maybe this is a limiting mindset, but for me, I feel like that's going to be much easier to accomplish if I'm financially well off. So that's a big why, because I do want to be financially well off to experience that. Uh, and I'd say the biggest one, Alec, is helping people realize that you can live the life the way that you want. And I share that from my personal experience being in the medical field and getting into real estate and having no previous experience and buying investment real estate. Like, it can be done. So I really enjoy challenging people's mindsets and helping them recognize and reframe what they think might be possible and pushing them and challenging them. And with our company too, like, this boils down into it. Like, we want to give. We want to give our time. We want to give financially to good causes. And we found that through our company and investing in real estate, we're able to provide that to other people as well, so that they can come along with us on the journey that we're already on.
That how's your spirituality or your faith played into the success that you've had this far?
Uh, it's I would argue to say all of it. And I know there's a lot of successful people that may not be super religious, and it's not to knock them or anything, but like for me, a big part of any religion is faith, right? Believing in things that you can't see but you know to be right, that you know to be true. And for me, that understanding of faith has helped me have courage and confidence in myself. And in those deep moments of prayer and meditation, I'll kind of clump those together because it's really what it is, right? Having a conversation with God. I feel like in those moments, that's where some of the biggest ideas and clarity have come to me. So I'd say it's played a massive role in what we've accomplished, and to say otherwise would be doing myself and God a disservice for sure.
If you couldn't work in real estate and investment real estate, what else would you do for work?
Probably sell feet pictures on OnlyFans or something. It just seems like such an easy gig, man. And there's people out there that would probably buy them. No, all joking aside, if I wasn't in real estate and doing investment real estate, I I don't know really what that would look like. I know at the end of the day, as long as I feel like I'm truly making an impact on people's lives, it, I would be happy with whatever I was doing. And I realized like I thought I could find that in the medical field and in nursing, but you get bogged down with the bureaucracies of corporate America and policies and this and that. And there's so much you've got to do that it's hard to truly feel like you're making an impact. So I don't know what it would be, but it would be something where I felt like I was truly making a difference in people's lives.
I like it. Yeah, that one kind of, I had never heard that one before. And then I was on another podcast and it came to me really quickly. I would do private equity and buy and scale businesses. What's your favorite book?
Oh, I've got so many of them.
Top three is fine too.
One of one of my all-time favorite books. Well, obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad, because that's what like got me into all this, and then his Cash Flow Quadrant book. Like if you haven't read those, absolutely read them. I'd say for me, one of two books that come to mind. Number one is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Mhm.
It, there's a few books that I read that when I read, I'm like, that makes so much sense, and I integrate something into my business because of it. So Atomic Habits is just really focusing on the small changes and realizing that things take time, but it's about creating daily habits to hit that ultimate goal. Not swinging for that home run and try to knock it out of the park first time, but getting all those base hits that stack up. So that's a big one. Atomic Habits by James Clear. And then the second one, it's a more of a it's a nonfiction, no fiction, more of like an anecdotal type of story, and it's called The Alchemist. And it's
Oh,
about this boy that has this dream of this treasure in Egypt. He lives in southern Spain, and he has this dream of this treasure in Egypt, and he just feels so strongly that he needs to go after it. And it's over near the pyramids. So the whole book is him on this journey to pursue that treasure. And I won't spoil anything or get into it too much, but what he realized the true treasure was the journey and the people he met along the way. And that book just resonated with my soul because I have these big audacious financial goals, and I need to make sure I'm recognizing the impact and the people and the lessons and the things I'm learning along that way. And I know when I hit those financial goals, that's not what's going to be of value. It's going to be that journey and the experiences that I went through. So I think a very powerful book for anyone considering getting into entrepreneurship or is currently in it, just to remind yourself of really where true value lies.
I love The Alchemist. I've given that book away so many times. I actually just sent a copy up to Lacey's brother, and from what I hear, he really likes it.
Good.
Who do you look up to?
Oh, I don't know that I have a person that I look up to. I am truly, truly inspired by anyone that's just getting after it. Um, there's not a person that comes to mind. Like, I don't have an idol, I don't have a model, I don't have like a mentor, right? And at the end of the day, I learn from it. I resonate and learn from people that are just crushing it and just going after it, because we're going through a lot of the same challenges, and if we can connect with them, there's that respect there, but then we can share our challenges with each other, and kind of help keep each other moving forward. So I'd say if there's anyone I look up to, it's anyone, whether you're in real estate or not. I don't care what it is. Anyone that's getting out of their comfort zone and really trying to push themselves to that next level.
Like that. What's your final thought you want to share with the listeners before we wrap up?
My final thought is everybody has an entrepreneur flame in them. I know there's some people that are working W-2s, and they might think that, oh no, I could never start a business. I could never do that. And I've heard this time and time again from successful business owners that felt this way. So my belief is that everybody has this flame of entrepreneurship in us. And it might just be a small little pilot light at this moment. And it's going to take a breaking point or something in your life that makes you realize that it's there. And then it's your job to fuel that flame, to grow it. And by doing so, you are going to learn so much about life, so much about yourself, so much about people, that you're going to wonder why that opportunity didn't come sooner.
That's gold. If the listeners want to connect with you and learn more about you, where can they follow you?
Yeah, they can they can follow me on Instagram. It's just Dallin_Schultz. And I got a big goofy handlebar mustache that's curled on the end. So just look for a guy in a suit jacket with that. Probably the only Dallin Schultz on there. Same on Facebook. If people are interested in learning more and getting involved with our real estate community, then Instagram's probably the best place for that. And that's Rev Multifamily, REV, Rev Multifamily. Or they could check out our website, investwithrev.com, and there's some information there.
Sweet. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. I think we got a lot of good gems in this one. So, uh, with that said, I will see you on Thursday.
Awesome. Appreciate the opportunity, Alec. Thank you.
Thank you.